Welcome everyone to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, Experience the Feldenkrais Method, the 7-week journey to embody somatic movements to transform habitual physical and emotional postures. I'm Lisa Bonace, and I'm really looking forward to this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Lavinia Plonka and address questions about her upcoming 7-week course, Experience the Feldenkrais Method, which begins Thursday, January 16th. And a little later, I'll explain how you can participate in the course even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to introduce our guest. Lavinia Plonka is a body language expert who has helped people improve their movement, behavior, relationships, and careers for over 35 years. She's taught the Feldenkrais method for over 25 years and is also an assistant trainer. Lavinia's popular workshops explore the intersection between movement, emotions, and the mind. She's currently the director of the Asheville Movement Center in Asheville, North Carolina. Lavinia's writings include several books and audio programs. And in just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome Lavinia, who will begin our session by leading us in an opening exercise. Welcome, Lavinia. It's great to have you with us this evening.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm super excited to be here. This is a really amazing evening for me. I've been looking forward to the possibility of actually sharing this work for a really long time in this way. And so I thought to myself, okay, the entire 7 weeks is going to be about exploring awareness through movement. And yet here we are sitting at our desks looking at a computer. And how could we begin the process of investigating ourselves just from where we are? And so I thought, why not the eyes? We might as well start with looking at how movement and awareness can even come into our eyes. So what I'd like to invite everybody to do, and I'm going to do it with you, so you don't have to worry about doing it wrong because it's just your eyes. We're going to look at how we can soften and ease the movement of our eyes so that you can enjoy the rest of this presentation. What I'd like to invite you to do is to take one hand and place it over your eye in such a way that the heel of your hand is just on your cheekbone and your fingers are pointing towards the center of your forehead. And then you're going to take the other hand and place it just the same way, crossing over. So basically you're creating like a little V over the bridge of your nose. And close your eyes and just look into the blackness. And the question that comes up for me right away is, am I looking at the blackness or is the blackness coming to my eyes? So could you imagine that you could let your eyes rest in that field of blackness? And you may notice that, of course, it's not completely black. There might be little sparks. There might be little variations in color. And those are different aspects of your brain at work, because your eyes bring in light, but your brain brings in the things that you're seeing, your perceptions. So right now your brain is going, what do I see? What do I see? And eventually that visual cortex can calm down. So imagine that you could see like the blackest part in front of your eyes. And picture that that's like a blot of ink that's pouring across your vision so that the vision in front of you becomes blacker and blacker as your eyes get softer and softer. And then keeping your eyes closed, just remove your hands from your eyes, but keep them closed. And begin to let your eyes travel a little to the right and a little to the left, back and forth. And as you do that, could you imagine that your eyes are looking inside of you, going back and forth along the inside of your face, down the inside of your throat, almost as if you had your own internal MRI going in, back and forth. Don't rush it. Just allow your eyes to move easily back and forth. Breathing is also good. So if you let yourself breathe and move your eyes and look inside, you see that already you're doing several things at once that require attention. Then when you get to the bottom, just cover your eyes again. Same way, looking into that blackness, and just notice, has the blackness changed for you in any way? Allow your eyes to rest in that blackness. And then we're going to just remove the hands and slowly open your eyes. Hi.
Hi.
I hope you did that with us.
I could not. I'm working at my desk. I will do it later when I watch it. But what is it that we just, well, those who did the exercise, what was accomplished during that exercise?
Well, a number of things can be accomplished. Again, each person has their own subjective experience whenever they do something with their eyes. So when we're constantly looking forward as at a computer screen, at our windshield, at the TV, we're not really using our eyes in a relaxed fashion looking in other directions. And the other thing that happens is that we're constantly looking outward, and so our eye muscles become tense from constantly going forward instead of allowing themselves to relax backward. So all of that, what we did was just begin to relax the eyes. But when we cover our eyes and allow our eyes to rest in the blackness while we're awake and conscious, we actually begin to relax the brain. You know, the muscles of your eyes are actually connected to your neck. So when you cover your eyes like that and relax your eyes, you can also get rid of some of the tension in the back of the neck. I could go on and on. I mean, I could spend a half hour just talking about the eyes, but maybe you want to go to other things. I don't know if that helped. There are so many different things that just happened. Hopefully people that are watching felt a little bit of something there.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that, because I find this whole topic fascinating. I'm learning along with everyone else. So yes, you've got a very attentive pupil here in me. So thank you for that, and I will absolutely be doing that when I'm just working at my computer without a camera on me. Now we have the rest of our time together to dive into our viewers' questions as we prepare for the upcoming course. Again, that's called Experience the Feldenkrais Method, and that begins Thursday, January 16th. And if you want to check out the website and learn more about the 7-week course, you can visit FeldenkraisHealingCourse.com to see the full description. So let's go ahead and get started with some questions. If you have a question for Lavinia, go ahead and type it in, and I'll be happy to read them aloud. In the meantime, we've already got quite a few questions waiting, so let's go ahead and dive in. We've got a great foundational question for us right here. This is from Angie, who wants to know, what are somatic movements? What does that word even mean?
Oh, I love that question. I'm so glad somebody asked it. Well, first of all, somatic is basically using the body. The word somatic comes from the Greek word soma, which means body. And so the idea is when we talk about somatic education, it means that you're learning through your body, through what your body does. And I prefer actually saying your body brain, because a lot of people seem to differentiate their actual muscles and other parts of themselves from their thinking brain. And to me, it's all one part. So the body brain in movement is what is considered to be somatic. So of course, we're constantly in movement. Everything we do is in movement. Every moment is movement, because even when you're still, you're breathing, your eyes are still taking in information. So movement is a continuous process of life itself. So you could say you're living, so you're having a somatic experience.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was a very thorough response. Let's go to a question here from Mary. She wants to know, can this method actually cure chronic pain, or must the movements be continually practiced to keep pain at bay?
There's a lot of different ways to answer that question. because there are so many different kinds of chronic pain. If chronic pain has become something that is like a pain loop in the body, that means that the body has created a habit. It's not like you've decided, oh, I would like to have pain and I would like it to repeat itself over and over. It has created itself. And when it's something like that, we can change the programming. But sometimes when we have a shock or stress, that old programming wants to come back. With Feldenkrais, at least we have tools so that when we recognize that things are starting to go south on us, we can come back to our place of centering ourselves. For me, the Feldenkrais method is a process of lifelong learning. We're constantly getting stresses that create different kinds of challenges for our nervous system, for our muscular system. And when we do awareness through movement, we can bring ourselves back into a place of homeostasis, back into a place of self-care. So when we talk about curing something, it feels as if, I say that I'm never going to have this problem again. Problems come back, and then we can work with them again. The Feldenkrais method gives us options for how we can work with something when it does return or when we do experience another challenge.
Okay. Well, then, there are a lot of questions. I mean, I'd say the majority of the questions that have come in are people asking about specific medical issues. And let me start out by saying that obviously you cannot offer medical advice. But with that being said, what can the Feldenkrais method actually help with, and what can't it help with? I know that's a big question, but at least it'll sort of give people an idea of, like, people are asking, can it help with cancer or can it help with arthritis? So let's just sort of discuss the overall picture of medical application.
So again, if we look at it, there's so many different ways we can look at it, but if we look at it from the perspective of movement, let's start with movement. So when you say something like arthritis or joint pain or any kind of a difficulty like that, then the Feldenkrais method can be very useful, because a lot of times something like arthritis or joint pain is the result of either an old trauma or use of self. And through the process of using these movements, you can begin to reorganize yourself so that you're not putting so much pressure on the joint, so that you're moving in a more fluid way, so that you're taking the stress away from your compromised areas and allowing them to heal. So that is a direct application of the Feldenkrais method that can help with those specific kind of problems. When you talk about something like cancer, which is not having to do necessarily with movement, the way that we're helpful for people with cancer is helping them, for example, find a way to be more comfortable within their limitations of pain. We're useful in terms of helping people recover their self-image, because my self-image has to do with how I move through life. So if I move through life and I feel weighed down because of things that have happened to me, I can find another way to carry myself that will make my life more comfortable. There are Feldenkrais practitioners around the country that actually work with people who have had cancer surgery or who are coping with the pain of chemo. We can help with pain. We can help people feel more comfortable, but we're not going to cure the cancer. I think that is something that is a much bigger situation.
Okay, thank you for addressing that, because like I said, that's a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people are in a lot of pain and a lot of concern about their conditions. So thank you for addressing that. Let's go back to Debbie's got a question here about, I'm sorry, it's not Debbie, it's, wait a minute, what happened to that question? Never mind, it's gone. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Debbie is saying about the opening exercise. I found my eyes look to the right most of the time, and I felt the tension in my neck from straining to always looking to the right. Doing your opening exercise daily, would that be helpful?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Isn't it wonderful to discover that you have a habit of what your eyes want to do and how it's connected to your neck? So, what I would recommend if you want to do this exercise is that you don't force your eyes to try to go to the left, but each time you do the exercise, you kind of explore the periphery, that edge, and see what it can tell you. Pay attention to your breathing. Notice what you're feeling on the left side of your neck as well as the right side of your neck. In other words, again, we call this awareness through movement. It's the attention that I pay to what I'm doing that brings the changes. So if you noticed all of that just from the movement that we did, you're already on your way.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you for that. Gosh, let's see. Here's a question I actually had when you were talking to Stephen. You were mentioning that a lot of the exercises are done on the floor. And Marilyn says, must I be able to get up and down off the floor to participate in the class?
The answer is no, you don't have to. So, and once you sign up for the course, there's actually a video tutorial, and our course host will be helping people orient themselves in a way that's comfortable. A lot of the lessons are done lying down. If you can't get down to the floor, you're also completely welcome to take the computer to your bed. And if you can't do that, there are ways that you can modify what we're doing while sitting in a chair. I'm not going to make people get up and down and up and down and up and down. We'll always start the class in sitting and give people time to organize themselves to come down to the floor if it's a floor lesson. They're not all floor lessons. And then we'll take the time again to come back to conclude. So it's not like you're going to be moving a lot once you get down there. But again, if you can't, come join us anyway. You might find that maybe by the third module, you want to come down to the floor for a little while, or you feel very comfortable in your bed. It's really, again, with Feldenkrais, we always say we start from where we are. I have students, I teach classes all the time, and I have everybody on the floor, but there are people who come in who can't get to the floor. So we modify the lessons so they can be in the chair. So we'll always find ways to work with it. Another thing that is really important with the Feldenkrais method is the ability to use your powers of visualization. So even if you can't do something and you just want to be part of the course and you just want to start the process of getting into the idea of awareness through movement, you could visualize along with the instructions in order to be able to start the process of retraining your brain. So just because you can't get down there doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to eventually.
All right. Good news for, I'm sure, more than just one person.
I'm sure.
Let's see. Yeah. There are a few people asking about TMJ specifically, but there's also a question here from Wendy asking, will this class help me to stop the ingrained pattern of teeth clenching while I sleep? So can we address the whole jaw area?
So, yeah, definitely, because that's something that was certainly a part of my life for a really long time. And I'm glad to say that the Feldenkrais method did help me a lot. So the thing is that when we're sleeping and we're doing it, there could be a lot of different reasons that is happening, including the positioning of your neck, what's going on in your nasal cavity, the organization of your jaw, and the fact that you're asleep. So what we do is we teach people very specific movement processes to help relax the jaw, to help work with the jaw in relationship to the rest of the self. So I believe it's the third module, when we're talking about discovering your power center, believe it or not, the connection between your jaw and your pelvis, because that lesson is going to be about the pelvis. We're going to be looking at some of those movements of the jaw that can help. But if you're really, really interested in working with TMJ, there are several very good audio programs using Feldenkrais specifically to help the jaw. And what I did, and what I know a lot of other people do, they're such small, delicate movements that you could do them in bed before you go to sleep. And it kind of helps program the mind to relax a little bit. So you've got that process. I mean, again, TMJ clenching is such a powerful habit. And there's so much about it that is related to our lives that it's going to be a constant reminder when you're stressed out. And yet here again, you would have tools to bring yourself back into a place of greater ease and softness.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. Let's change subject just a touch here and take a question here from Damaris, who wants to know, how does Feldenkrais transform your emotions?
So our emotions and our movement are absolutely interrelated, right? So if I'm feeling depressed, I'm going to be carrying myself in a particular way. Even if I'm trying to look cheery or trying to look confident, there's going to be tension, or what Moshe Feldenkrais called an anxiety pattern that's held in the body. We hold our anxiety in lots of different ways. Maybe there's a clenching in the stomach or the jaw, as we just talked about, or in the shoulders. All of those physical patterns you could call postural patterns are also connected to our emotional patterns. So when we start to unpack our physical habitual patterns and find greater relaxation, greater awareness of how we carry ourselves, we begin to start to shift our emotional attitude as well. So we don't I would never say that I'm a therapist or a psychotherapist. Those people work directly with speaking about your emotions. What we do is we work physically and allow the emotions to be observed. And in the process of that observation and clarifying how I am, the way I am, those emotions can become the emotions that I want for myself. If I'm anxious or depressed, for example, I might have a particular breathing pattern that signals to my nervous system that all is not well. That physical, emotional feedback loop is constantly going on, so that then I feel depressed and anxious and I start to have physical problems. So by working physically, we're opening up the possibilities of healing emotionally.
Okay, so it can actually help with depression. We've got a question here from Michael. I'm curious if this will help with depression. Does it actually help to alleviate it?
Well, of course it can, because if I am feeling better in the way I carry myself, in the way that I'm breathing, if I'm feeling more clarity about my options for movement through life, then my mood is going to be affected as well.
Okay. Well, then, while we're on the topic,
I just want to add one more thing.
Yes.
Actually, Lisa, I just want to add one more thing. So one could say that a lot of times when we're trying to work with our depression or our emotions in different ways, that we're thinking from the inside out. I'm seeing my emotion and I'm wanting to, make it manifest in another way. When we work with awareness through movement, when we use somatic education, we're actually working from the outside in. We're observing the body patterns themselves, and then that communicates to your nervous system and tells your brain everything's okay.
Okay, thank you for adding that. I was going to tack on to the question about depression because you were talking about anxiety. Somebody here, Stephanie, says, I've suffered from panic attacks most of my life, so an elevated type of anxiety. Will Feldenkrais help with that?
Well, again, it can. It depends on what kind of panic attacks they are, the sources of the panic attacks. We can certainly offer tools that help a person, but if you're in the midst of a panic attack, you have to develop other resources in order to deal with it. So there's I guess what I'm trying to find out is the question that she's asking, can I use Feldenkrais in the middle of a panic attack, or can Feldenkrais help me over the course of my life have a better experience so that I don't have so many panic attacks? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's two different situations.
Yeah, the question is, will the method help me to get rid of them? So it sounds like she's not asking for like in the minute cure, more of a working toward getting rid of them.
Well, again, I wouldn't say that that I would just go, poof, yes, we can get rid of them. But I would say that, there have been successes at helping people calm their nervous system down. What are the causes of the panic attack? What are the triggers for a panic attack? What happens in my body right before a panic attack? As I become more aware of myself, I have more tools at my disposal in order to work with it. It's not like a magic wand that's waved and suddenly I'm no longer having a panic attack. It's a greater understanding of what is taking place in me and what is happening. So people sometimes have panic attacks because there's an experience of vertigo that can't be explained, or there's something else going on in the vestibular system. So one has to address that first. If one is having a panic attack because maybe they're not able to get enough oxygen, we can begin to learn how to breathe in more functional ways that could help that. So again, we never try to say something across the board because each person's story is so unique. Each person's reasons for being the way they are is individual to that person's nervous system. And I always respect where that person's nervous system is coming from and how it's meeting the movement.
Okay, great. Thank you for explaining that. And since you brought up vertigo, Lorraine wants to know, will this work on alleviating vertigo? And I assume it depends on the reason for it, but let's go ahead and address that.
Yeah. I have not found that just doing Feldenkrais is the way to get rid of vertigo. Because if the vertigo is something that's going on with the crystals in the ear canal, it's not going to change it that much. So it really depends on what you have, the kind of vertigo you have. If you have vertigo due to anxiety, that's possibly able to be fixed. But, I said the word fixed. Oh my God. Reorganized. But when it is something clearly having to do with the ear canal, I don't think that we want to claim that Feldenkrais can do that.
Okay, great. So do you actually have like a swear jar? If you use the word fix, you have to put a quarter in it?
My students actually, for a while, if I said the word should, because we don't use the word should very much, or if I said the word fix, they would tell me that I had to bring chocolate into the next class. So they've got me well trained.
So if you get a craving for chocolate, you're saying fix all over the place.
Well, I don't say it, but as soon as I say it, somebody will go chocolate. So you all can call me on that.
Works for me. Well, you know what? Since we're on the topic of vertigo, Marianne is asking, will this help with balance for older people? And I'm not sure if she means a woozy head or just plain body balance, but let's go ahead and just discuss the topic of balance.
Yeah, balance is one of my favorite subjects because we have inner balance as well as physical balance. So trying to find balance in my life is an endless somatic experience. But the short answer is absolutely yes. Because as you become more physically organized in your ability to understand where you are, how to support yourself, how to figure out how to, we talk about a trajectory of movement, a line of force from the foot up through the head. Once I start to feel more confident about where I am in space, how to use myself, and have increased flexibility, because the Feldenkrais method does increase your flexibility and your range of motion. You have a lot more options for ways that you can recover when you do step on the curb the wrong way or slip on some water, where a lot of times if we've gotten stiff due to age and lack of movement, then that surprising moment doesn't offer us any options. So absolutely, people have been helped for their balance tremendously, not just by me, but by Feldenkrais practitioners all over the world. It's one of our big subjects. And Feldenkrais himself was a martial artist. And so he looked at this whole idea of our relationship to gravity and how we can relate to gravity, both standing up as well as being on the floor, which is another reason why we're down on the floor in some of our lessons, and as well as having the resilience to be able to get back up again after having lost our balance. So absolutely, the Feldenkrais method is fabulous for balance.
Okay, great. Thank you. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're here with Lavinia Plonka, learning about her upcoming course, Experience the Feldenkrais Method, which begins Thursday, January 16th. And you can log on to feldenkreishealingcourse.com for all the details and to register. And the spelling of it is right there on the page in front of you. So that would be where you go to register. Let's see. Where do we want to go from here? Amy wants to know, she says, I have a hard time centering myself, and I definitely have chronic pain. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, again, I love these questions that are mental, physical, emotional, right? Because when we talk about centering ourselves, that has to do with a feeling of being grounded within my own sense of my self-image, as well as feeling, like we talked about before, balanced, feeling that place of center. In terms of that being related to chronic pain, this is very interesting because a lot of times when we have chronic pain, we have different areas that feel that they need to hold. Some of them are unconscious holdings, and some of them are intentional holdings to try to get away from the pain, to try to balance ourselves in spite of the pain. And all of these different ways that we're trying to compensate for all these little discomforts actually throws us off of our center. And that creates sometimes hypermobility in the joints because I'm holding in the trunk. Sometimes it causes different joint problems because of the fact that they've overused certain parts of themselves in order, again, to compensate. So when we do Feldenkrais awareness through movement, we begin to look for, one of the things we do is we look for what is working. Where can I find a moment of peace or ease and then move from there? We also look at all the different places that might be holding, inhibiting, creating protection. Sometimes it's necessary protection, sometimes it's not. So we always try to keep it within a place of safety. We don't want to take away anybody's important protection. The process of finding oneself becoming more centered and at the same time relieving pain is really a process of bringing awareness to how I can work with the nervous system, how my awareness can begin to allow that area to open, free, let go. So to answer the question briefly, to center oneself, you could begin to use movement both from the periphery to your center and from your center outward in order to start to find a better balanced place for yourself. And in that process, the pain can move away, the pain can ease. A lot of times people with chronic pain tell me that their pain moves, it shifts, it goes to different places. So we can begin to explore that as well and see if that pain loop that I spoke about can eventually be rerouted right out of the system.
Okay, great. We got a follow-up question here from Angie who says, am I understanding that the Feldenkrais method is relating our inner sight to inner balance and maintaining groundedness?
I'm trying to connect inner sight, inner balance, because of course we are going to be using inner sight and that will help inner balance. But to be grounded physically in this world, You also want to be able to use, to actually find better ways of moving, better ways of feeling stability, better ways of connecting your bones. So I would say it's inner sight, insight, we could call it insight, and then also attention to the way I use myself.
Okay, thank you. Angie, if that wasn't clear, go ahead and add an additional question, but I hope that was what you were looking for. Let's see, I just lost the question. Here it is. Liza wants to know, how can I know where to begin? Where does the course start us out in our own personal journey?
So we'll begin with module 1. So what I've done with the course is looked at 7 different aspects that I find really interesting and useful, 7 different applications, I should say, of the Feldenkrais method, because there are myriad applications. Anything that has to do with movement, with wanting to be able to do something better, can be addressed through movement and the Feldenkrais method. So we'll begin at the beginning. So many people have questions about pain. So many people want to know how they can become more aware in order to work with their pain. So that's the beginning. I'm beginning with that. And I'm intentionally also doing that because the first module, the movements are going to be very subtle and small. So no one will have to feel challenged or stressed about how they're going to do. Not that the movements throughout the whole course are stressful, but I want people to feel just how easy and soft it can be. We all have pain sometimes. I mean, it's part of life, and we need pain. If you didn't have pain, you would bleed to death when you cut your finger because you wouldn't know it was bleeding. So we all have pain, and we all often have to address it. And that's why I picked that as a universal beginning. That said, it also is going to be a lesson that helps address various aspects of how that pain might have come from habit, from trauma, from anxiety. And we'll look at all of those things through the lens of this very delicate movement that I'm planning for that first module. And then with each module, I'm going to be building the skill level, even though it's not a skill in the sense of getting good at it, but at understanding more and more about your different movement capabilities until we get to the very end and we're actually working with moving out into the world. So another way to answer that is to say that we're always beginners in a Feldenkrais lesson. Every time I lie down on the floor, I feel like I'm learning something new. I'm beginning again. I'm starting anew. So you could start with any module if you wanted to, but that was the reason that I structured the course the way it is.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see. I think this would probably be a good time for me to answer some questions about the course. People are starting to send in questions for that. We have time for plenty more questions for Lavinia, but before we take those, I'll go ahead and field these. Once again, the name of the course is Experience the Feldenkrais Method, and this is going to be just a fascinating 7-week journey under Lavinia's expert guidance where you'll release trapped trauma and anxiety that contribute to your physical pain and emotional suffering through the Feldenkrais method. And the 7-week course takes place on Thursdays at 5 o'clock Pacific, starting Thursday, January 16th. And if you can't join us live, I know that's a big concern for a lot of people, but that's fine. You won't miss the teachings because you will receive audio and video recordings, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. Also, I'd like to remind everyone that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks until January 30th, in this case, to make sure that you absolutely love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. And some people wonder, is the class on Facebook? It is not. It is only the community group, just the chat group. Otherwise, the class is online via Zoom. Also, everyone who registers receives Experience the Feldenkrais Method bonus collection. First, you'll receive an audio lesson from Lavinia entitled Self-Hug. Next, you'll get a video dialogue with Cynthia Allen from Future Life Now called Less Pain, More Gain. Plus, you'll receive an ebook from Lavinia entitled The Little Book of Falling and Getting Up. And when you register by midnight Pacific on Saturday, January 11th, you'll receive this extra gift, and that is an audio collection from Lavinia called Power of the Pelvis. So, Lavinia, before we get back into questions, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course?
Oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to sharing all of it. I think that the thing that I'm most looking forward to sharing is the fact that this work can change your life. It changed my life. I got into this work because I was in pain and I was unhappy. And I found that by tuning into my habitual movements, I was able to actually transform the way I was living my life and get out of pain. And so I feel like I'm on a mission. You know, I often tell people that my mission in life is to try to make Feldenkrais a household word like yoga or Pilates. And so what I'm most looking forward to is having people experience the joy of connecting with their own sense of themselves, seeing how they are and seeing the possibility that they can be who they really want to be.
That sounds terrific. Thank you for answering that. So let's go ahead and get back to questions here. I can actually relate to this one. This is from Tina. She says, I'm afraid of falling because I tripped once and injured myself and have noticed that I'm becoming chair-bound and I'm too young for that. Can Feldenkrais help with that?
Oh, you know, that's one of my favorite subjects. I actually even did a TED Talk on falling. Falling to me is one of the biggest sort of hidden terrors of our society today. So many of our population are aging, and that fear of falling, I don't know if you know that fear of falling is actually one of the greatest causes of falling. Because when we're afraid of falling, we actually change our stance, we become more tense in the body, we narrow our peripheral vision, and all of those things actually limit our ability to be able to recover if we should lose our balance. So to answer the question, we actually, in Feldenkrais lessons, that's one of the reasons that we're on the floor a lot. We actually learn how to move on the floor in order to eventually learn how to get up off the floor easily. And then through that process, learn to get down to the floor. I can't tell you how many times students of mine have come in and said, hey, guess what happened to me today? I fell and I didn't hurt myself. And what happens is that your body becomes so trained to understand how to be resilient in this change in your relationship to gravity that it just spontaneously takes care of you as you do that. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about falling during this particular course, but if this person is interested in actually learning how to A, fall well, and B, recover, I highly recommend starting to take Feldenkrais classes wherever you live, just getting involved with a teacher somewhere so that you can do that. And then, of course, if you sign up for the course, you're going to get that book, The Little Book of Falling, which also has exercises in it, lessons in it that you can practice that will help you.
Okay. Well, I'll be looking into that. As I mentioned, I tripped last year, broke my wrist, ended up in the hospital for 2 days, and it was just a little trip. so I feel you, Tina. I absolutely get that. I'll be looking at your ebook.
Yeah, a fall can happen in 1/25th of a second.
Mm-hmm. I believe it. It was just, I just tripped. It wasn't like I wasn't skateboarding or parasailing or doing anything crazy or dangerous. So yeah, it can happen. Let's see. We've got a question here from Pat. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but she wants to know, why do I yawn and my eyes tear up when I'm doing somatics?
Well, there's a number of different things that are happening when you're doing this kind of. I'm actually glad that you asked this question because, you know, your nervous system has so many different ways of responding to different kinds of information and stimuli. So a lot of times when we're doing somatic movements that are very slow and very relaxing, you trigger the parasympathetic response in the body. So you have, your autonomic nervous system has two parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic. And your sympathetic nervous system is the one that governs your daily activity. It's in charge of fight or flight. It's the one that gets the job done. It's the one that makes us feel like our brains are going to explode when we have too much work to do because we just keep on doing it all the time. Parasympathetic is what gets triggered when you get a restful sleep, when you are in shavasana and yoga, when you're learning, when you're meditating. Your parasympathetic nervous system has an opportunity to come in. It's also what governs our healing. So when we live a lot in sympathetic mode, and then you lie down and you start doing these movements, your nervous system, which is triggering parasympathetic mode, then starts to go, it must be nap time. I'm relaxing. And then the tearing happens because your eyes are also wanting to close and wanting to let go. So it's not a bad thing that that's happening to you. I think that if you give yourself permission, you'll find that you'll be able to relax into whatever somatic exercises you're doing and just enjoy it. But, different people have different reactions. I mean, some people who live in sympathetic mode, they come to a class and the next thing you know, they're snoring because their parasympathetic nervous system is so not used to resting while awake that it just thinks it's time to go to sleep and they zonk out. It takes a while for them to reprogram and allow themselves to be in parasympathetic mode while doing movement. So just give yourself permission to just keep on going.
Interesting. Thank you. And now we've got a lot of people here, a lot of people asking about the hips. One person says they've had a double hip replacement. One has had a hip replacement and 2 knee replacements. Another one has osteoarthritis in the hips. So let's talk about the hips.
The hips. So, I mean, again, I could do a whole series. So our hips, when people say hips, they're usually referring to their hip joints. That's the part that gets replaced. And that's the part that gets worn out from overuse. One of the biggest reasons for overuse in the hip joints is actually underuse of your pelvis and your ribs. So we spend our lifetime sitting, right? Sitting at the computer, sitting at the TV, and then we get up and we go running or walking, and we're not engaging and integrating the other parts of the self. So then that means that the legs and the hips are just doing all this work by themselves, and eventually they wear out. So that's one thing that happens. Another thing that happens when a person only has had, they have a problem with only one hip, it could be the way they stood for 50 years, where they hiked up on one side or put pressure on one side. But it's osteoarthritis part of it is life and deterioration. I mean, I hate to say it, but we're all on a one-way road. All I'm doing is trying to maintain comfort and ease for as long as possible. So arthritis is part of an aging process, but it's exacerbated by poor use of self. And so Feldenkrais lessons help, again, redistribute that force, that mass, so that you're using yourself in a more fluid way, putting less pressure on those small joints, using the ability of the spine and the trunk to be able to move you without just stomping down on those weight-bearing joints. And that happens when we're lying on the floor, working with releasing the spine, the pelvis, the neck, the shoulders, in order to have a more fluid movement and not put the weight on the hips and the knees.
Okay. Well, here's a related question then. Molly says, I work as a cashier standing all day. Are there any preventative moves to avoid pain in the future?
Well, if you're standing all day, I definitely recommend that you take the time to do some kind of, whether it's a Feldenkrais lesson or some other somatic lesson before you go to work or after you get home at night, to reprogram your brain and your nervous system so that the muscles can have a little bit of a relief. In other words, if we work, Feldenkrais often said, we move according to our perceived self-image. That doesn't mean the way I like to see myself, but what I have created for myself. So if you're standing all day long with a minimum of movement, eventually your brain decides, oh, well, this is who she is. This is how she's supposed to be. And therefore, it won't know to let go and allow you to move in other ways unless you do something for yourself. So you want to do it with awareness. I mean, it would be just as wonderful after working to go and take a dance class or a yoga class, but you have to do it with a level of awareness where you're able to actually let the brain go, oh, right, I'm not standing right now. I can let all that go. It's very, very important when, especially people who have sitting or standing jobs, give yourself some time. There are some really wonderful Feldenkrais lessons, and actually, in the course, we'll be doing, when we work with the back, we'll be working with the back, we'll be working with the pelvis, and we'll be working with the ribs in various modules. And any of those lessons would be incredibly helpful. And of course, the bonus that you're getting, the power of the pelvis, all of those lessons would be incredibly helpful to use even a small portion of them after you work so that you can kind of re-lubricate. Right? Our joints respond to movement in uneven surfaces, to movement in novel ways. So when we stand like this, it's no longer getting that lubrication. So you want to take care of yourself and do that for yourself.
Okay, thank you. And this is sort of a related question because you sort of answered this, but we've got an anonymous question. If you do not have chronic pain, but just congestion in the head and frozen muscles from stress and earlier trauma, can Feldenkrais help to unwind patterns that may not be in the realm of acute pain?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're carrying it somewhere in your body. You called it congestion. You called it, I think, anxiety. All trauma remains, I mean, you could say it's the story that stays with you your whole life. So how do I work with it when it starts to paralyze me from doing what I want to do? When I start to feel limitations because of this trauma that I've been carrying? The body remembers everything that's ever happened. Doesn't get like that kind of an amnesia. It will forget how to do things. Going back to the cashier example, that if you're just standing all the time, the body will forget how to do other things, but it's not going to forget different kinds of stress until you learn to become aware of other options, other ways of moving yourself, other ways of holding yourself, how to let go of the different habitual patterns that have been created.
All right. Well, thank you for answering that. Let's do one last question here. This is from Marilissa, who wants to know, is it necessary to do the exercises every day, or will 3 to 4 times a week constitute a good routine? And how long each day?
I love that question because it actually opens up a whole can of worms about our attitude towards learning. So we never tell people what they should do. Remember, we talked about should and chocolate before. Every person has their own learning style, their way of approaching things, their baggage that they're taking with them. So, Feldenkrais said that if you tell somebody that they should do something a certain amount of times a day, then there's going to be the person who goes at it and won't stop and practices all the time. And so they're just going into their same compulsive habit that they had about other things. Another person might not do it and then feel guilty because they didn't do it. And so then it's actually counterproductive because they didn't do their homework and now they've got to make up an excuse. A third person would just be resentful that they're being told that they should do this homework all the time. So, a lot of times when I work with people who've gone to physical therapy and they get all these exercises and I'll say, well, how did these exercises work for you? And they'll be like, nah, I didn't really do it past the third day. So what we encourage people to do is to do what you want to do, to follow your curiosity, to be interested in what you might learn as you do the movement, not to think of it as a routine, but to think of it as an opportunity to explore. And you might find that one day you want to do one exercise, one day you might skip a week. The world's not going to change much. You feel what, and then even examine for yourself, why don't I want to do it today? Well, that's interesting. Where am I today? So we use the exercises as an opportunity for more self-knowledge, more self-observation. But by following your curiosity and being interested, those are the two most important things. And then you'll decide how many times a week or how many times a month you decide you want to do it. I have students that come to class once a week, some come twice a week, some practice during the week, some show up every 3 months when they've hurt their shoulder. We all have our own way of addressing needs.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for removing the guilt. This has been really a fascinating hour. I want to thank our viewers for being with us today and for all of your great questions. You guys help make these conversations. Once again, Experience the Feldenkrais Method starts Thursday, January 16th. And again, you can visit feldenkrais.healingcourse.com to learn more and to register. So, Lavinia, before we cut you loose, do you have any final words for our viewers?
Oh, gosh. I just really hope to get to meet all of you in some capacity, either at this course or in the future. And I guess I will close with one of my favorite quotes from Moshe Feldenkrais, and that is, movement is life, and without movement, life is unthinkable.
Very deep. Well, thank you again, Lavinia. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you.
And once again, thank you to everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great night, everyone.